Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome to another review of Masters of the Air, the tragically overlooked World War II show that I am doing whatever is in my tiny power to do to make people look at.
Yes, this show is definitely worth a look, and you probably will hear us continue to preach on and on about its good merits.
The entire show, like this is so Band of Brothers, it's not even funny. Like, this is the best we have gotten in a very long time, probably the best we are going to get in a very long time. And today's episode is all about the action. We've got a big, fat combat episode today, where the Mighty Eighth makes a mighty fuck-up and sends a goodly portion of their people to their doom over Germany. This happened quite frequently.
They lose an entire wing of bombers almost, save for like 2.
Yep. The squadron we're following lose half of their machines. Out of 21, only 11 make it all the way. And this was actually something that was a frequent problem in the various plans of the Strategic Bomber Command, especially in the early days of the war. Or early days of the bombing campaign, at least. Where they would come up with very ambitious schemes. Where today's ambitious scheme is like, okay, we're going to send up all of our machines, over 200 aircraft, and the German soldiers, they're going to be like, ach, nein, schnell. And they're going to avoid the Germans shooting them all down by taking a weird route. Because normally the Germans would go, okay, well, they're going to go back to England now, so we're going to be ready on the return path. But instead, they're going to head to Africa. Only problem is, only a third of the total bombers actually lift up on time, and the remainder are 6 hours behind them. And so a third of the bomber formation takes all of the German attention and gets butchered and then needs to fly all the way to Africa.
Yes, because they were supposed to fly in sync because that way the enemy air power could not be focused on one group. It would have to be spread across multiple, and that would prevent them from absolutely getting chewed to pieces. Which, because of the fog in today's episode, that's kind of where the issue comes in, because they don't take off for, I believe, an hour, right? Because they're put behind an hour or so, 30 minutes.
Yep, and the brass takes the executive decision to, no, go anyways. And only once they've actually, gone, do they get the word that the rest didn't actually go anywhere and are now 6 hours behind them.
Yep, so now they get to soak up all of that, and to boot, not only are they going to soak up all that, but the enemy can refuel, then come up and do it again and again and again. And then for the next bomber groups behind them, which we don't even see, that's going to now be all that pressure on them, so that's going to be loads of fun.
Yep. And again, this is a nice way of showing off this stuff, because this is still the Americans learning how to war. The American Army and Army Air Force, as we're seeing here, was very new at this point. Like, they'd gone from, I think, peacetime U.S. Army was something like 100,000 men or something, to that being just in the Army Air Force alone plus later on. Like, it's an enormous increase in the organizational structure. And so there will be many, many little failures along the way, which we get to see today.
Yep, because there were hundreds of bombers deployed here. Because in the previous episodes, there was just, a couple of wings worth, or a couple handfuls. And what's interesting about that is that the first 2 episodes are just a series of mishaps and, more or less failures. So today we actually get to see finally an actual bombing mission that doesn't get aborted or scrapped, halfway through.
Yep, they actually dropped their bombs on a factory. I wonder if they'll show us, like, the after effect, because one of the other things as well was that the Bomber Command tended to massively overestimate the effectiveness of their bombing. And the Germans got very good at rebuilding stuff. Busy little goymans they were.
That would be interesting. I think that the show is probably going to more focus on the characters, so unless somebody gets captured,
well,
probably not going to see it.
We've got one person who's probably heading to a Stalag very, very soon, as he landed in Belgium. He's now joining up with the Resistance, so this is kind of how they're going to keep things a little bit more fresh, because they introduce now the subplot of this guy trying to make it back to England. There seems that there's going to be some more romance in the future, which I suppose you can't have a good show about soldiers in the different countries without them trying to sexy the local girls, of course.
Americans can't keep it in their pants. I don't think that, not in this episode, or not in the next episode, it doesn't look like.
And literally can't. I'm a little bit skeptical about that, because it's a World War II show, and it's like, okay, we're going to take an episode now where they just want to have sex with women. Like, okay, I mean, depending on how they do it.
This did lead to the baby boom, because people banged and boned like crazy.
Well, it did. It also led to the, to the Australian uprising. Since forgotten.
Listen, we saw that the Australian manpower was diminishing, so American troops wanted to help repopulate.
And it's certainly one interpretation.
It's the one we're going with.
I'm also very happy with the visual effects in this one. Like, they've got a nice big battle. There's tons of vapor trails and contrails, and there's zippy little bullets flying around. The special effects on people losing limbs, of course, are nice as well. There is one brief moment where a person is chopped in half by a propeller, which is brief for a very good reason, as it does not stand up to closer scrutiny, but everything considered, the effects are pretty good. I am mildly annoyed by the fact that they keep calling the BF-109s 190s, but oh well.
They also abbreviate them as forts. Like, when they land in Africa, they're like, oh, we lost a lot of good forts.
They did indeed. They lost many good forts.
Yes. The other thing to point out with the action sequence that was kind of interesting, we actually see the Goymans, as Barge likes to call them, use rockets in today's episode.
Yes. Okay, so the show is doing a little bit for the sake of interest here, I suppose. There were cases of Germans using rockets against B-17s, because the issue was it was difficult to shoot down a B-17s. And so there were instances of them using air-to-ground rockets against forts. It was ridiculously unreliable. They weren't designed for that. They did not fly straight in anywhere near the kind where they do here. They were because here's the thing. These were rockets in the truest sense. They would fire off, and the rocket engine would only be on for a short period of time. After that, the weapon was ballistic, practically.
Yep. Sailing, yeah, through the air.
Yeah, so hitting a fort moving at a few hundred kilometers per hour, whilst you yourself were flying at a couple hundred kilometers per hour, etc., hard.
Yes, if you've ever played War Thunder, you kind of know how that feels. It's sort of just like a crapshoot. You're just sort of throwing stuff at him, kind of hoping that maybe you'll hit. And there were 2 strikes, which is interesting.
Yes.
Now, granted, one of them I don't think did too much, but one of them was the one that blew the guy's legs off.
Germans got very lucky. There's also, I actually, see, this is why I wish they would have the German perspective as well. Because right now, one thing I will critique the show is that the Germans are very much so just das Enemy. And they do das Enemy things, like coming in straight ahead of them, guns blazing. It's like, oh, Goemon's over there, shoot them down, etc. There were a lot of tactics that the Germans used on this. Like, none of them fly with their wingmen, for example. It's all just single individual strikes and so on. They don't sneak up on the forts. Like, the Germans quite quickly figured out, like, the weak spots in the forts, and they would use boom and zoom tactics, usually from above, where they would dive down on them. Here, continuously, the Germans are coming up at the forts, and when they had time to scramble, which they absolutely did here, they would climb as far as they could to zoom down on the forts and aim towards their wings, etc., and try and figure out the sweet spots in the continuous coverage of their machine guns and so on. So I wish there was a little bit more of that, a little bit more of the German side, but, well, it is the current year, so.
Well, I'd also say that the shows, just like Band of Brothers and just like Pacific, it's all about the American point of view, because they're actually following, historically, a group of people that actually did these things. And if I remember right, these are, now correct me if I'm wrong, but these are real people. These are real stories. These are things that actually happened.
At the very least in the broad strokes, I'd imagine, yes.
The other thing to also mention is that the landing scenes in today's episode were kind of interesting, because before they actually land, they start running out of fuel, and they actually show you what the crews did. So they basically take the guns and they throw it out. They take the ammo, throw it out. They even make it a point to talk about the bombing computer and be like, well, should I throw this out? Like, we're not supposed to do that. And he's like, well, we're over water. The Germans won't get it, you know? So it was nice to see them actually mention that and how, weight is such a big deal. Like even earlier, there was another scene where a plane was going down and they emptied the payload so that they can use the bomb bay door for the guys to bail out through.
Yep. Problem solving. As that is a good way to keep the suspense up, because this was a 40-odd minute episode, and almost 20 of it is dedicated just to action, which is very nice as well. So we finally get the big payoff that the 2 preceding episodes promised.
Yes, this was actually quite a bit, and it really did feel like they poured a lot of time into this one, because it was a lot of shooting, and you got a lot of angles, you got a lot of CG, you got a lot of planes exploding, people getting blown to pieces, so it was pretty interesting and fun to watch.
Gotta have something for the trailer, yo.
That's true. I feel like that was part of the trailer for the show, and you even see some of the action sequences used in the intro. Yeah,
probably.
So this was a big episode.
Now, the problem with good television is that it's pretty easy to summarize good television. So, there you go. The Masters of the Air is still good. You should still watch it. And yes, I know it's on Apple Plus, which nobody even knows exists. Which is a shame,
but you
because
should watch
it's got
it.
some good shows. Go watch Masters of the Air. Please. I beg of you.
Please.